In this video, you'll learn what ancient people actually did all day. It wasn't quite what we see in the movies. It wasn't just hunting or just a struggle for survival. What if life was much calmer and even slower than we're used to thinking? Think about it. If you found yourself thousands of years ago, without a phone, without a watch, without your usual routine, how would you fill your day? How much time did it take to find food? Did they have free time? Or was every minute a struggle? What did they think about while sitting by the fire? And how did their evenings go? And most importantly, was their life really that hard? Or was there more peace in it than in ours today? Today, we'll slowly walk through a single day in the life of an ancient person, from the first rays of the sun until late at night, and try to understand what their life was really like. Imagine silence, so deep that you can hear your own breath. You can hear the earth breathing. The sun hasn't risen yet. The sky is dark, but no longer night. Somewhere on the horizon, a barely noticeable streak of light has appeared, as if the world has taken its first, cautious breath before awakening. The air is cool, fresh, almost still. You don't find air like this in cities. It smells of earth, grass, and something ancient that has no name. The ancient world is waking up slowly. No cars, no voices, only the occasional rustle. The wind barely touches the grass, and somewhere in the distance, a bird, having woken up before everyone else, lets out a call. Perhaps it has been waking up like this every day since the dawn of time. In one of the simple dwellings, made of wood, branches, and earth, a man sleeps. His sleep is deep, without anxious thoughts, without endless plans for tomorrow, without to-do lists that won't let him rest. Just his body, honestly tired after yesterday, and the calm of the night, which holds him as water holds a stone at the bottom. And then he wakes up. Not abruptly, not from the sound of an alarm clock, not from the vibration of a phone, but as if the world itself is gently nudging him, quietly, without words. It's time. His eyes open slowly. He lies there for a few more moments and simply listens. It's still quiet outside, but something has already changed. The quality of the silence has shifted. The day is beginning. He gets up. His movements are calm. No rush. He has nowhere to be late for. He has no schedule, no clock, no appointments on his calendar. There is only light, which will soon fill everything around him. He steps outside. Before him lies his world. A small settlement, a few dwellings, earth trampled by the feet of many generations, traces of a campfire, and a horizon that grows brighter with every passing minute. At this moment, everything seems very quiet, as if the world itself is holding its breath just before it begins. Gradually, the others wake up. Someone steps out of a neighboring dwelling, squinting against the morning air. Someone is already sitting by the dying fire, carefully, almost tenderly, stirring the embers. Someone speaks quietly, almost in a whisper, as if afraid of scaring away the dawn. The fire is the first thing they tend to. The embers must not go out. A person bends down, picks up some dry grass, carefully brings it to the smouldering spot, and slowly, very carefully, he begins to blow on it. Smoke appears. Then, a small, flickering flame. And now the fire comes back to life. A warm light begins to softly illuminate their faces. The shadows recede. The world becomes a little warmer. Think about this for a second. Fire is warmth. Fire is protection. Fire is the ability to cook food, survive a cold night, ward off danger. For these people, fire is not a metaphor. It is life in the literal sense of the word. And they tend to it every morning. Again and again. Day after day. Nearby, someone goes to fetch water. The path to the river is part of the morning ritual. It's not far, but you have to walk there every day, on foot, across the cool earth that still remembers the night. In their hands, a simple vessel. All around, the morning world, just beginning to wake up. The birds sing a little louder. The grass glistens with dew. The scent of the air by the water is special, alive. The water is drawn slowly, without haste. On the way back, a person notices things that no one pays attention to in the modern world. Animal tracks on the ground, a change in the scent of the air, the movement of grass in the distance, the direction of the wind. All of this is information. They read the world around them constantly. Not because they have to, but because there is no other way. It is not a conscious effort. It is a way of being. Meanwhile, the sun rises higher. The light grows warmer, brighter. The shadows shorten. The settlement fills with movement. The children wake up. But they don't run off right away or make a racket. First, they simply sit down next to the adults. They watch. They observe how the fire is lit, how the water is prepared, how the day begins. This is exactly how they learn. Without words, without explanations, without textbooks. Simply by observing, absorbing everything like a sponge, because what they see will one day save their lives. Someone starts preparing food. Leftovers from yesterday's catch, or roots gathered the day before, or something that doesn't require complicated preparation. The smell of food slowly spreads through the air. It isn't sharp, but it's warm, familiar, like the smell of a house, for those for whom a house is not walls, but the people nearby. Everyone sits closer to one another. Food is not just a necessity. It is the moment when the day truly begins, when the group becomes itself, not separate individuals, but something unified. They eat calmly, without unnecessary words, or with quiet, short phrases. No one is looking at a screen. No one is in a hurry to go anywhere, because a long day lies ahead. And they need to conserve their strength. After the meal, preparations begin. Someone gathers tools. Someone inspects a spear. Someone quietly patrols the area around the settlement. Not out of anxiety, but out of habit. Because here, attentiveness isn't a character trait. It's a condition for survival. But for now, the morning is still gentle. There's still time. And someone just sits there, watching the sun, or the ground in front of them, or the fire, which crackles steadily, calmly, like the breath of a sleeper. In this moment, there are no extraneous thoughts, no overload, no anxiety about what will be, no regret about what was. Only presence, complete, alive, here and now. The day is just beginning. Much lies ahead. The search for food, work, movement, fatigue, perhaps danger. But now, there is only dawn, the warm light of the sun rising above the horizon, the soft crackling of the fire, the scent of earth and morning, and a feeling, quiet, calm, real, that everything is going as it should, that this is enough. The sun has already risen higher in the sky. The warmth begins to be felt on the skin, at first barely, then more and more distinctly. The shadows grow shorter, and the morning calm, so fragile, so fleeting, slowly gives way to movement. Now, the most important part of the day begins. The search for food. Not as a task, not a duty, but a natural part of life, as inevitable as breathing. Like moving forward, no one announces the start. No one gives the command. People simply begin to gather. Someone takes a spear, checks the tip, runs their fingers over the smooth surface, makes sure everything is ready. It's not just a tool, it's an extension of the hand. He made it himself, slowly, patiently, over several days. Every strike, every notch, his own handiwork. Others take baskets, sacks, simple containers, and gradually the group splits up. Some head toward the forest, others toward the open plains. Some head toward the water. Everyone knows where to go. These routes aren't marked on a map. They're stored in memory, in experience, in years of observing how the land behaves at different times of the year. Which animals come out here at dawn? Where the berries ripen first, where the water is cleaner. This knowledge is priceless, and it doesn't live in books. It lives in people. The hunters move slowly. Their steps are almost silent, toe first, then heel, softly, carefully, as if the earth might be startled. They don't speak, only occasionally exchanging glances or brief gestures that mean more than any words. They listen. The forest speaks to them, but not with words. The rustle of leaves, a snapping twig, the movement of grass where there was no wind, a bird that has suddenly fallen silent. All of this signals a whole language that no one specifically taught them. It simply seeped in from childhood, year after year, during thousands of hours spent just like this, in silence, in motion, in observation. One of the hunters suddenly stops. Everyone freezes. The silence grows even deeper. He bends down, looks at the ground, tracks, fresh. He runs his hand along them, barely touching the ground, as if reading the time that has passed since the animal walked here. A few hours, no more. The others watch in silence. They understand without explanation. The movement continues, slowly, calmly, with attention to every detail. Sometimes they walk for so long that the sun has time to shift noticeably. But no one hurries. No one is nervous. There is no concept of wasted time here. There is only movement and everything it brings. Meanwhile, in another part of the area, a different group moves differently. Women and some members of the community are gathering plants. Their steps are freer. They can talk quietly, sometimes even laugh. A brief laugh that quickly fades, but their attention is no less keen. They know where to look. Here is a bush with berries. One woman carefully picks a fruit, examines it, checks its color, shape, and scent. She brings it to her lips, not to eat, but just to taste. These, yes, these know. Knowledge passed down over the years, sometimes through entire generations, not written down anywhere, but alive, in the hands, in the eyes, in the body's memory. Someone learned this from their mother, she from hers, and so on, back into the depths of time, further than anyone can remember. A young girl watches nearby. She doesn't gather anything herself yet. She just watches. She memorizes. In a few years, this knowledge will become her own, and then she will pass it on. This is how memory works when it has no paper. Nearby, someone is digging up a root. The earth is soft. Their movements are smooth, almost gentle. They do not destroy the place completely. They leave part of it, so it can recover. They do not take more than they need, because they know tomorrow they will return here again, and the day after tomorrow, and in a year. The earth is not a warehouse that can be emptied. The earth is a partner, and a partner must be treated with care. The day goes on. The sun climbs higher. The heat grows stronger. The air fills with scents of warmed grass, resin, damp earth at the roots of trees. And in this rhythm, in constant movement and observation, time passes. The hunt can take hours. Sometimes the prey is found quickly. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you have to go further, deeper, longer than planned. Sometimes you return empty-handed. But even in this, there is no irritation. There is only acceptance. Not resignation, not indifference, but a calm, firm knowledge. That is how life is. And resisting this is just as pointless as resisting the changing of the seasons. No luck today, so they'll go out again tomorrow. It's not a defeat. It's just one of those days. At some point, the hunters stop again. This time, not because of tracks. A sound, quiet, almost imperceptible. But to them, obvious. An animal is somewhere nearby. They crouch. Their breathing slows, deeper, steadier, almost imperceptible. The body knows what to do, on its own, without commands. Every movement is precise, like that of people who have done this 1,000 times. One takes a step forward, another. Time seems to slow down. The whole world narrows down to a single point, and then a brief action, quick, precise, and again, silence. No screams, no celebration, no unnecessary emotions, only calm. They move closer. The prey has been found. One of them crouches down nearby. For a moment, he simply stands there, silently. This is not a theatrical gesture. It is something real, an acknowledgement, gratitude that doesn't need to be spoken aloud to be genuine. Because they realized long ago, they are part of this world. Not its masters, not its conquerors, simply part of it. Today they will have food. In another part of the area, the baskets are gradually filling up. Berries, roots, leaves, the bark of some trees. Everyone finds something. Sometimes they show each other their finds. Sometimes they share. Sometimes they just continue in silence, each at their own pace. One of the women sits down for a short rest. She leans her back against a tree. She closes her eyes. She just breathes for a minute, maybe two, without thinking about how much more she needs to gather, without worry. Just a pause, one her body asked for, and she gave. Then she stands up and continues. The day moves on. The sun begins to dip gradually toward the horizon. The light changes, becoming slightly more golden, longer, softer. And that is a sign. It's time to return. The way back is no less important. They walk more slowly, given what they're carrying, but just as attentively. They're still observing. They're still listening. Because the world doesn't stop speaking just because the workday is over. Along the way, one of the hunters notices something. He marks a spot to return to tomorrow. He doesn't say it out loud. He just remembers it. That's how experience accumulates. Not in records, in people. The settlement gradually comes into view ahead. The smoke from the fire is visible from afar. It's a landmark. It's a house. Some return first, then others, and gradually everyone gathers together. Everyone brings their share. Some bring game, some bring gathered plants, some simply bring the weariness and experience of the day. And all of this comes together as one. Community life. No one is left out. Everything is shared. Because here, they have long understood what we sometimes forget. Survival is not a personal matter. It is always a shared one. A person alone is vulnerable. People together are resilient. Someone starts cooking. Someone helps. Someone simply sits down nearby, resting, watching the fire. Children are running around nearby. One of the boys quietly approaches the hunter, looking at the game. He doesn't ask anything. He just looks. And the hunter lets him look. There's no need to explain anything. Everything is clear as it is. The body feels tired. But it is a peaceful tiredness. The kind that comes after real movement, after real work, after a day lived to the fullest, without reserve, without regret. The sun is lower now. The light grows softer, warmer, more golden. The smell of food begins to spread over the settlement. And with it comes the feeling that the day's main task has been accomplished. Food has been found. Everyone has returned. The fire is burning. Life goes on. And tomorrow it will all happen again. The same path, the same sounds, the same rhythm. Calm, ancient and unchanging. This rhythm existed long before us. It will continue to exist after us, and somewhere deep inside each of us, it still lives on, quietly, at the very bottom, like a memory of who we once were, and who, perhaps, deep down, we still are. As the sun rose higher, and its warm light gently fell upon the earth, life in the settlement became quiet and unhurried. The air was heavy with the scent of herbs and damp earth. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out to another, and its voice faded into the morning silence, not disturbing it, but merely emphasizing it. Those who remained were in no hurry and did not fuss. Everyone had their own task, simple, familiar, almost imperceptible to an outsider. But it was precisely these tasks that made up their entire world. Not from words, not from decisions. From the movements of their hands, from patience, from a repetitive rhythm in which there was something more than just work. It was the rhythm of life itself. Near one of the dwellings, a man sat on the ground, leaning slightly forward. In his hands were 2 stones. One was heavy and rough, with uneven edges, as if it had just been torn from the earth. The other was already almost smooth, with a sharp edge beginning to form, warm to the touch, warmed by long labor. He slowly struck in against the other. The sound was soft, dry, short, like the crack of a broken branch. And between the strikes, there was always a pause, a long one, filled with attention, as if he were listening to the stone, as if he were waiting for it to suggest the next step. Sometimes a small fragment would fly off to the side, and the man would watch it go, not taking his eyes off his work for long. Sometimes the shape hardly changed, and the blow seemed to go into nothingness. But the man was in no hurry. His movements were calm and precise, not because he was thinking about precision, but because his body already knew what to do. Other stones lay beside him. Some were already finished, with smooth, confident edges. Others were only just begun, not yet having found their shape. Each was waiting for its time. The boy sat nearby and watched the man's hands intently. He didn't ask any questions. He just watched, the way one watches a fire, without looking away, without rushing to understand, simply letting it sink in. Sometimes the man would hold out a small stone to him. The boy would take it with both hands, carefully, as if it were something precious. He tried to strike it. It came out uneven. The stone slipped. The sound was dull. His hand trembled a little more than necessary. But no one was in a hurry to correct him. No one told him how to do it right. He simply tried again, and with each attempt, his movements became a little more confident. Almost imperceptibly, but it was happening. A short distance away, a woman was working on an animal hide. She held it with both hands, carefully stretching it, smoothing it out, running her palms over it, slowly, with pressure, feeling where stiffness remained, where the fabric resisted. Sometimes she paused to lightly moisten the hide with water. It absorbed the water quietly, and the hide seemed to sigh, becoming softer, more pliable. Sometimes the woman took a sharp tool and carefully, almost tenderly, removed the excess. where something unnecessary still remained. Her movements were gentle, almost fluid, without haste, without any effort that would be noticeable from the outside. The hide gradually changed. It became more supple. It rustled more quietly under her hands, as if it, too, were calming down, getting used to its new state, forgetting its former roughness. A little girl sat nearby. She helped hold the edge of the hide, with both hands, intently, as if it were a very important task. And it really was important. Her little fingers gently touched the surface, rough at first, then softer and softer. She was memorizing it. Not with words, with her hands. Sometimes the girl would simply look at her mother, and that was enough. Not far away, another woman was weaving a basket. The supple branches creaked softly as they intertwined. A living, slightly damp sound, like a whisper. Her fingers moved confidently, almost without looking. Her body knew this path by heart. Round by round, the shape became smoother. First, just the base, still unstable. Then the sides, which began to hold on their own. Then the edges, smooth and tight. Sometimes the woman hummed softly, barely audible, almost a whisper. No words, just a melody. Simple, repetitive, like the weaving itself. This quiet humming blended with the rustle of the wind and the distant singing of birds, and became part of it all, inseparable, natural. The children were nearby. They didn't run or make noise. Some sat on the ground and watched. Others cautiously tried to mimic the movements, holding a stick like a spear, or sorting through small twigs, as if they, too, were weaving a basket. They were learning, but it didn't feel like learning. There were no explanations, no rules, no corrections. There was only being present. Observation, imitation, slow, patient, almost unconscious. That's how knowledge passed from hand to hand, from generation to generation, without words. A fire crackled quietly somewhere nearby. Every now and then, someone would toss a branch onto it to keep it from dying out. Its warmth was familiar and soothing, not scorching, not intimidating, but just right, like something of one's own. Something long since grown accustomed to. Sometimes one of the adults would lift their head and gaze into the distance, at the trees, the sky, the slowly drifting clouds. The wind blew quietly through the settlement, carrying with it the scent of grass and earth. No one put it into words. They simply looked, and then returned to their work. The sun rose higher and higher, and the shadows grew softer and shorter. The work continued, but there was no fatigue in it, only repetitive movements to which the body had grown accustomed. The hands moved, and with them the day passed, unhurriedly, steadily, like water in a quiet river. Gradually, finished items appeared nearby. A sharp stone blade neatly laid out on the ground. A soft hide folded nearby. A basket already taking shape. Each item was simple, but in each was the warmth of the hands that made it. In each was time, patience, attention. Sometimes people exchanged what they had made, without arguments, without counting, simply because that was the right thing to do. One would hand a tool to another. Another would share something of their own. And that was enough. By this time, the children were beginning to get tired. Some would quietly lie down in the shade and fall asleep right there, curled up, resting their heads on their hands. And even their sleep was part of this day. Part of its rhythm. Part of its silence. The sun began to sink lower. The light grew softer, warmer, not the sharp light of morning, but the golden light of evening. Hands slowed down. Movements became less frequent. People gradually finished their tasks, put away their tools, and cleared away their work pieces. No one was in a hurry to finish sooner. The day itself was drawing to a close, just as unhurriedly as it had begun. The fire once again became the center of their attention. Voices, rare, soft, sounded calm without urgency. Some gazed into the fire. Others looked up at the sky, where the first stars were just beginning to peek through the evening blue. The work was done. Not because everything was finished. There's always more to do. But because the day said, enough. And the people listened. In the silence that settled in, a feeling remained. Simple, quiet, almost elusive. The feeling of a day lived right. Not by anyone's rules, but simply right. Just as a river flows. Just as grass grows. Just as the sun rises and sets. Hands had done their work. The day had been lived. And that was enough. As the sun began to sink slowly toward the horizon, the light changed. It grew soft, almost tangible, golden, viscous, like honey. Shadows stretched out and fell across the ground in long streaks, and there was something soothing about those shadows, as if the air itself were exhaling after a long day. The day was gradually letting go of the earth. Sounds grew quieter. Even the wind seemed to slow down, passing between the trees and dwellings more cautiously, without haste, like someone who didn't want to disturb anything. The grass stopped rustling so loudly. The birds sang less often, and their voices sounded different. Not like a morning call, but like an evening farewell. The earth cooled slowly. The heat accumulated during the day still lingered. In the stones, in the dry soil, in the air close to the ground, but you could already feel that night was coming, that it was near. People were returning little by little. First one, then another. Hunters emerged from behind the trees, tired, silent, carrying their prey, or simply the weight of the long journey. Their steps were slower than in the morning. Their bodies bore the weight of the entire day. Every ascent, every descent, every moment of tense anticipation in ambush. Those who had gone for water or gathered plants were also returning. They walked quietly across familiar ground, along paths they knew by heart, over stones that remembered every step. No one spoke loudly. There were no shouts across the clearing, no hurried questions. People met each other's gaze, nodded, sometimes briefly touched another's shoulder, and in that touch lay everything. "You're back. I'm glad. All is well." There was something almost invisible in this return, the feeling that the day had been lived, and now one could simply be together. Not to do, not to go, just to be. In the center of the settlement, They were kindling a fire again. It was done unhurriedly, with care. First, tinder, dry moss, thin kindling. Then the first smoke, thin, almost transparent, rising straight up into the still air. Then the first spark, small, trembling, still unsure of itself. And then it flared up. Dry branches crackled softly, absorbing the heat. The flame grew steadier, more confident. The light spread in a soft circle, not harsh, not blinding, but warm, alive, as if breathing. People were drawn to this circle. They sat down nearby, some on the ground, some on folded animal skins. Some stretched out their legs, giving them a rest after a long day. Some hugged their knees and simply watched the flames, not thinking, not analyzing, just watching the fire move. The warmth slowly spread through the evening air. It touched their faces, hands, shoulders, and along with that warmth came something else, a relaxation that could not be summoned by an act of will. It simply came on its own. Peace. For a while, everyone just stayed silent. After a long day, words weren't needed. Not because there was nothing to talk about, but because the silence itself was good, fulfilling. It contained everything, the fatigue that no longer weighed him down, but let him go. The warmth that surrounded him, the feeling of people nearby. The fire crackled quietly. Sparks sometimes rose up and faded into the darkening sky, not reaching the stars. Somewhere nearby, you could hear the sounds of the night that was just beginning. A distant bird's cry, the rustle of grass, the quiet, cautious footsteps of someone unseen. No one was frightened by these sounds. They were familiar. They belonged here. Part of this evening, just like the crackling of the fire, just like the breathing of the people sitting nearby. Gradually, conversations began, soft, calm, like water that begins to flow on its own, effortlessly. The hunter spoke of where they had been, not in detail, not with maps or explanations, just words that painted a picture. A dense forest beyond the hill, a wide trail on damp earth, a long wait when you couldn't move and could barely breathe. The moment when everything came together. Sometimes he smiled slightly as he recalled it. Sometimes he just nodded. If the day had been difficult and luck had eluded them. The others listened, without interrupting, without rushing. Then someone else would talk about their own experiences, about berries found far from their usual spots, sweet, plentiful, about a new tool that turned out especially well. The blade fit exactly as it should. About how, on the way back, the sky in the west was such a color that you just wanted to stand and watch. The conversations flowed slowly, without arguments, without haste, with pauses in which you could hear the fire breathing, and these pauses didn't need to be filled. The children sat nearby. They were no longer running or playing. The day's weariness took its toll. Gently, without a struggle. They pressed closer to the adults, wrapped themselves in furs, and listened to the voices. Their eyes reflected the fire. 2 small flames in each face, alive and quiet. Sometimes a child would ask a question, in a low voice, almost a whisper, as if afraid to disturb something important. And the adult would answer just as quietly, briefly, calmly, without excess. And the child would fall silent, satisfied. Sometimes one of the elders would begin to tell a story. Not right away. First, there was silence. A pause during which everyone seemed to sense that something was about to begin. Then came the voice. Deep, calm, steady. A voice that seemed to come not just from the throat, but from somewhere deeper. He spoke of things that happened long ago, of people who lived before, on this same land, under this same sky, by the same fires, of places where the ancestors went and what they found there, of animals, strong and swift, with whom one had to learn to live side by side, about forces that cannot be seen, but can be felt, in the wind, in the water, in the silence before a storm. The words sounded slow, as if they were coming from far away. There was no rush in the story. It flowed just like the day that had passed, calmly and steadily, with pauses in which one could imagine what was being told. The children listened, barely moving. Their bodies grew heavier, but their eyes did not yet close. They stayed open so as not to miss a thing. Sometimes one of them would ask a quiet question, and the storyteller, without rushing, would answer, not losing the thread, continuing on his way through the story. The adults listened too. Perhaps they had heard this story before, but that didn't matter. Each time it sounded slightly different, because the fire burned differently, the people sat differently, and the darkness around them lay differently. The fire gently illuminated their faces at that moment. The light fell on foreheads, on cheekbones, on hands folded in laps. Everything around became a little different, warmer, quieter, deeper. The boundaries between people and the darkness blurred. The circle of light was their own. Everything beyond it, foreign, but not frightening. Just different. Sometimes someone would begin to hum softly. The melody was simple, a few notes repeating over and over, like a breath. It required no words. Others might join in or simply listen, and this only made it richer. The evening was filled not only with the sound of the fire, but also with this soft singing. It rose upward with the smoke and dissolved into the night air. Conversations gradually grew fewer. Words gave way to silence, but it was not an empty silence. It contained everything: the weariness that had turned to peace, the warmth that held them, the sense of people nearby, their breath, their presence, their warmth, safety. Someone closed their eyes without leaving, simply allowing themselves to be there without looking. Someone else still gazed into the flames, seeing something of their own in them. The children fell asleep first. Their breathing evened out. Their bodies went limp. Their faces became completely calm, the way they only are in dreams. The adults stayed a little longer. Sometimes someone would add a branch to the fire. Sometimes someone would quietly speak the last words of the evening, to no one in particular, just into the air, and the others would hear. And then they, too fell silent. The sky grew darker and darker. Stars appeared. First one, the brightest, then another, and another, and another, until the sky was full of them, deep and endless. The fire continued to burn. Not brightly, evenly, calmly. It demanded no attention. It simply was, as it always had, as it always would. And in its light, people sat together, needing nothing more. The day was fading, leaving behind only a warm, quiet feeling that everything was as it should be, that this evening, these people, this fire, it was all right. It was all enough. All of this. This is life. As the fire died down and the sky grew completely dark, night gently enveloped the earth. It did not come abruptly. Not like a cliff, but like a gradual descent. First, the last hues of sunset faded. Pink turned to grey turned to blue, and blue faded into black. Then the last light on the horizon faded. A thin strip that still lingered, still a reminder of the day gone by. And only after that did the silence become truly deep. That silence in which there is neither day nor evening. Only night. It was vast. It was its own. The settlement sank into stillness slowly, like a person who cannot bring themselves to close their eyes right away. The fire was still burning, but no longer brightly. The flames had grown lower, calmer. They no longer leapt upward, no longer flickered, no longer cast sharp shadows. They simply were. It breathed quietly, occasionally spitting out small sparks that rose into the darkness and faded away, leaving no trace. The light from it fell in soft patches, on the ground, on the furs, on the sleeping faces. It did not illuminate, rather, it marked. It said, "It is warm here. These are our own. There is no need to be afraid here." The shadows grew long and motionless. During the day, the shadows moved, creeping after the sun, shifting, shortening, and stretching out again. At night, they froze. They became part of the darkness, its extension. And there was something soothing in this stillness, as if the world had finally stopped moving and was simply standing, breathing, resting. People settled in for the night. This too happened gradually. Some went to bed earlier, while the conversations by the fire had not yet completely died down. Others stayed longer, sitting and staring into the flames, in no hurry to drift off to sleep. Everyone found their spot. Not a random one, but a familiar one. The place where they slept well. The place with just the right distance from the fire. Not too close to get burned, not too far to freeze by morning. Some lay closer to the fire. Those who were colder, those who were more tired, those who simply loved that warmth right by their faces. Others lay a little farther away, those who needed air, space, the feeling of the open sky above their heads. The animal skins sheltered them from the night's chill. Beneath them it was warm, the warmth of bodies, the warmth of the earth, a warmth that built up slowly and lingered long. And the closeness of other people offered something else, something hard to put into words. Not just warmth, something deeper. The feeling that you're not alone, that others are breathing nearby, that if something happens, someone will be there. No one was left alone. That was important. More important than it seemed from the outside. Being close didn't mean talking, looking at each other, or doing something together. Being close simply meant lying a few steps apart, and knowing that this was how it should be. The children were already asleep. They fell asleep more easily than the adults, effortlessly, without that inner resistance that sometimes prevents you from letting go of the day. Their bodies grew tired, their eyes closed, and sleep came on its own, quickly, calmly, like water filling a hollow in the ground. They lay next to the adults, breathing quietly. Sometimes one of them would turn slightly in their sleep, settle in more comfortably, snuggle closer. Little hands would sometimes find someone's hand, an adult's, large, warm, and squeeze it without waking up. Their faces were peaceful, free of the anxieties that appear on a face during the day, that slight tension of alertness, that readiness for the next moment. In sleep, all that faded away. Only the face itself remained, soft, open, utterly simple. Just sleep, deep and soft, like the night itself. The adults, too, gradually closed their eyes. But not right away. Some lingered in that liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, when the body no longer wants to move, but consciousness has not yet faded, when thoughts slow down, blur, and lose their edges. In those final moments, some watched the fire. Watching the fire is a special activity. It requires no effort. It requires no thoughts. The flame moves on its own, and the eyes simply follow it, without a goal, without intention. And in this following, something lets go. Something that had been holding on all day. An imperceptible tension, a readiness to react, gradually loosens and fades away. Someone was looking at the sky. The sky at night is not the same as the sky by day. By day it is bright, close, understandable. At night it became different. Dark, deep, endless. The stars twinkled calmly, almost silently, if one can say that about light. They didn't move, or moved so slowly that it was impossible to follow. They simply were. They had been there for a long time, and they would be there for a long time yet. It was easy to look at them, not because they explained anything, but because next to that vast, dark sky, everything else, the fatigue, the day's difficulties, what hadn't worked out, what had been a source of worry, became smaller. It didn't disappear, but it shrank to the right size. And then one could close one's eyes. The night brought different sounds. The daytime noise faded away. Voices, the clatter of stone against stone, the crackling of twigs underfoot, children's laughter. All of it vanished along with the day, and something else took its place. A quiet, barely audible rustle somewhere in the grass. A small, nocturnal animal going about its business. A distant, drawn-out sound. The cry of some bird that doesn't sleep. The wind, which became different at night. Not gusty, but steady. Long, like someone's breath. Leaves that barely touched one another. They didn't rustle, but simply touched, gently, as if they didn't want to wake anyone. These sounds weren't frightening. They were familiar. They were their own. Night after night, from the moment of birth, these sounds surrounded people while they slept, and the body learned to ignore them. It learned to hear in them not danger, but the familiar presence of the world. The world lived. The world breathed. And that was good. Sometimes in the middle of the night, something would change. A sound would draw near, becoming different. Then one of the adults, without fully waking up, would simply become a little more alert. The body itself knew when to be on guard and when not to. And most often, not to. The sound passed, receded, and sleep returned, uninterrupted, only slightly shifted. The fire continued to burn slowly. It didn't need constant attention. Someone else was still awake. Not all night, but part of it, glancing over, adding a branch when necessary. That, too, was routine. A quiet watch that required no effort, only presence. The fire protected. It warmed. It kept the darkness at a distance. Not a frightening darkness, but simply a darkness one was better off not getting too close to. Animals gave it a wide berth. The cold could not penetrate its circle. It was there while everyone slept. Sometimes someone would move slightly closer to the warmth in their sleep, without waking up, obeying only the sensation. Sometimes a hand would find another person's hand and stay there. It would just lie there, warm, alive, close by. And that was enough. The night was long, but there was no anxiety in it. There was none of that oppressive feeling of endless waiting that comes when you can't sleep. And the darkness seems endless. Here, the darkness was just right. It was exactly as it should be. The body rested. The hands that had worked all day, striking stone against stone, stretching hides, weaving branches, now lay motionless, relaxed, heavy, calm. The legs that had walked, carried, stood, stretched out and released their tension. The back, which had bent over work, straightened out. The body knew what to do at night. It knew how to do it better than any conscious effort. Just let go. Just lie down. Just let everything that had accumulated during the day quietly fall apart. Thoughts, if there were any, fragments of the day, faces, movements, became quiet and slow. They lost their sharpness. They blurred. And eventually they vanished. Not because they were driven away, but simply because that is what happens when the body rests. Only breathing remained. Steady, calm, one breath after another. The children's breathing, light, rapid. The adults' breathing, deeper, slower. Together they created a kind of rhythm, quiet, almost inaudible, but present. And time flowed imperceptibly. The fire gradually grew quieter. The flames subsided, not dying out, but specifically subsiding, like something that had done its job and could now rest. They turned into the soft glow of embers, reddish, deep, almost alive. This light barely illuminated the ground around them, but it was enough. It was there. It held on. The world seemed to stand still. The wind grew less frequent, or fell silent entirely for a while, as if it, too, had decided to take a break. Sounds receded further, grew fainter, almost unreal. The sky overhead stood still, and the stars in it seemed to burn brighter than at the start of the night. No wind, no clouds, just a steady, cold light from above. And in this deep night, everything was in its place. People slept. The fire smoldered. The stars shone quietly above them. the same ones that had shone above their parents, above their parents' parents, above everyone who had slept under this sky before them. It couldn't be put into words. It simply was, like something you know without words, something you carry within you without realizing it. And somewhere very far away, beyond the dark horizon, a new day was already preparing. It was not yet visible. The sky in the east was no different from the sky overhead. Dark, starry, nocturnal. There was not yet that barely perceptible change, that first hint of light that appears before dawn. But it was already near. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the earth, the sun was already turning to meet us. It was already moving along its path, the one it had always followed, the one it would follow again and again. And when the time comes, not soon but inevitably, the light will once again gently touch the earth, first with one edge, then more broadly. Then the air will begin to warm, and the birds will be the first to feel it, before people, before dawn itself. They will begin, one after another, to sing, and someone among the people will open their eyes. They'll lie there for a while, between sleep and wakefulness, in that warm interval when nothing is needed yet, when one can simply be, and then they'll get up, and the day will begin. Calmly, quietly, as always, the night still held the earth in its gentle embrace. The fire had almost died down, leaving behind only warm embers. They glowed faintly in the darkness, quietly, peacefully, as if breathing in unison with the world. Everything around was still. Only the breathing of sleeping people, and the rare, barely audible rustle of the wind. But somewhere far away, beyond the horizon, movement was already beginning. Still invisible, still very quiet. The first signs of a new day. At first, the sky grew slightly lighter. It was almost imperceptible, as if the darkness had simply receded a little. The stars began to fade slowly, one by one, and soon only a deep, soft blue remained. A little more time passed, and the very first ray of light gently touched the earth. It was in no hurry. First, it appeared on the far edge of the horizon. Then it slowly crept across the grass, over the stones, along the edges of the dwellings, and finally reached the settlement. A gentle light touched the faces of the sleeping people. Warm, soft, peaceful. Someone stirred slightly in their sleep. Someone took a deeper breath. Someone turned over, settling in more comfortably. The world was beginning to wake up. Not all at once, gradually, as if the air itself were becoming lighter. Birds began to make their first quiet sounds. First one, then another. Their voices were soft but lively. It was as if they were greeting the new day. By this time, the fire had almost died out. All that remained was the warmth still lingering in the earth and the stones around them. One of the people opened his eyes. He didn't jump up. He didn't make any sudden movements. He just lay there and looked at the light, at the sky, at the world slowly waking up. Then he sat up, calmly, without haste. He looked around. The others were still asleep, but they would wake up soon. He reached for the embers, gently stirred them, and added a few dry twigs. At first, nothing happened. Then a faint smoke appeared. Then a small flame. And there it was again. The fire. Quiet. Alive. Familiar. Gradually, the others woke up too. Some opened their eyes and immediately squinted at the light. Others lay there for a long time, listening to the morning. The children woke up slowly, snuggling closer to the adults, reluctant to leave the warmth of sleep just yet. But the day was already coming, and with it, life. Some got up and went outside to look at the horizon. Some stretched, limbering their arms after sleep. Some approached the fire, holding their palms out toward it. Everything repeated itself. But this repetition was not empty. Every day was like the one before. And yet, slightly different. The light fell differently. The wind blew differently. The sounds rang out a little differently. And people sensed it. They lived within this circle, without trying to change it, without rushing forward, simply following it. The day began again. Again, someone would set out in search of food. Again, someone would work with their hands. Again, in the evening, everyone would gather around the fire, and night would fall again. This circle was quiet, constant, reliable. It demanded nothing more. It asked no unnecessary questions. It simply was. And there was something profound in that. Almost imperceptible, yet very important. A connection between man and the earth, between day and night, between the past and what lies ahead. The children grew up within this circle. First by watching, then by trying, then by doing it themselves. And one day they became the ones who taught others. And so it went on, peacefully, slowly, without unnecessary noise. The sun rose higher and higher. The settlement fully awoke. Life began anew, and somewhere deep within this simple, repetitive rhythm was a feeling that everything was in its place, that nothing was superfluous, and nothing important was lost. And if you listened very quietly, you could feel that rhythm, the rhythm of light, the rhythm of breath, the rhythm of life. It was slow, calm, and it was easy to be in it, as if the world itself gently lulls you to sleep, and at the same time gently wakes you to a new day.